Here's a provocation to kick us off. Most consulting businesses will not grow, will not scale to the level that the founders would like to scale to. And it's not because they're not smart, and it's not because they won't work hard enough, but despite their intelligence and despite their efforts, most consulting businesses will fail to scale. Prove me wrong, Carrie.
I'm not going to prove you wrong. I'm going to ask you to tell me more. Why do you say that?
So let's compare it as an example with a software company. Okay, let me ask you this question. What's easier to scale, consulting or software?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I got to believe it's software.
Me too. Why? I've never done it, to be fair, nor have you.
Either. But, being tangentially connected to people who have,
sure.
I think, there's a pretty straightforward path. And once you choose the specific product that you're developing and delivering, and once you validate that works in a market, then there's a roadmap, right? There's a straightforward path that you move along that helps you grow from, first user to something that is, truly out there in the world.
Yeah. Completely agree. I think you touched on this, but my answer is more specifically singular product focus. Mm-hmm. That's if we're using Riverside FM to record this podcast, right? And if I'm in charge of growth at Riverside, I'm selling one product. It's a Riverside. It doesn't change. It's one product, one solution, one user experience. And I don't need to worry about variability in terms of the product or the user experience. I can just focus on selling what we have because it works. Consulting is, because of that, I think one of the most difficult businesses to scale. And I'm not saying you shouldn't scale it. I'm saying it's challenging. Why? Because no two clients are the same. And no two client experiences are the same. And no two client problems are identical, often similar, but not identical. And so without any real guardrails around who you work with and what kind of problems you solve, without any clear criteria, what we see happen really, really often among consulting businesses that get to, $500,000 or $1 million is they didn't get there by being clear and focused on their offering. They got there by doing really, really good work for different clients, different projects, different scopes, different things. And so we look at their portfolio, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's like a bit of a dog's breakfast of a portfolio. How do you scale that?
Yeah.
Just do more random things for random people? Is that a business you can scale?
I mean, in some ways, yes, there are people that do it, but I'm going to tell you, it's a battle, right? It's, jumping from one thing to the other and sort of scrambling. I mean, I'm sure it's possible to grow. I don't know if scale is the right word in that context. It's possible to make more money, but yeah, I don't think it's possible to scale if what we mean by scale is, truly delivering to more people by multipliers.
Yeah. So let's get into some of the challenges there. Why is it hard to grow? Why is it hard to scale? I mean, first and foremost, well, not first and foremost actually, but top of mind at least, how do you hire for something like that, right? And so I'm thinking about a couple of consultants that we're going to be working with pretty soon who they were doing, or are doing rather, I think $750,000 in revenue, 750. They want to get to $2 million. That's their goal. When I asked why, the answer was, well, we don't want to be frontline delivery forever. We want to step back and be out of the day-to-day and focus on running and growing the business. Fair enough. And that's a real goal for a lot of consultants. Not everybody wants to scale and grow and build a team, but the ones who do, often one of their motivations is getting out of the day-to-day of delivery, or building a team that can do the delivery. And of course, you dig into what are you doing and who are you doing it for and what kind of projects, and there's nothing focused about it, right? It's not very streamlined. It's different types of projects, different types of clients, a lot of variability, different types of work. And the words they use to me is the problem is right now, like if we want to go out and hire, we need to find a rock star.
Yeah.
We need to find people like us who are able to deliver in different environments and in different contexts and with different clients. And that's really hard to find. And those people, by the way, tend to be very, very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So the first problem is growing something where there's no clear focus is you're going to have a really hard time finding people that can deliver with that level of variability at the level of quality that you expect and likely your clients have come to expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really, what we're talking about, there's a problem, an internal facing problem, which you're talking about now, right? How do you hire people if you don't have an identity? How do you hire people if you can't be clear to them what kind of work they're going to be doing, right? How do you hire people if you can't explain to them what their job is, essentially? And then looking externally, same issue, different group of folks that you're dealing with, right? How do you get more clients? How do you sell yourself to somebody if you don't have an identity? How do you sell yourself to somebody if you're not clear about the problem you're solving? How do you sell yourself to someone if it isn't clear what you're going to do for them and what value they're going to get from that relationship?
Yeah. And I think that word identity is really important, right?
Yeah.
Most folks who want to scale, beyond $1 million, they likely have to go beyond their warm network. They likely have to go beyond the very small circle of people that know, like, and trust them. And we talked quite a bit about this in the previous episode. And so when you go beyond your warm network, because they don't know Carrie or Amit or Joe Schmo, right? The question they're asking is, when they do discover you, like, what do I need to know about you? What box do I put you in? What label do I put you in? What do I go to you for? Right. And it's like, to use some consumer brand examples, Carrie, what's Tesla about? Politics aside, just that example. What does Tesla do? What do you go to Tesla for?
Tesla creates electric cars.
What do you go to Nike for?
Fast shoes.
What do you go to Lululemon for?
Looking good at yoga.
What do you go to Procter and Gamble for?
So many things.
Exactly,
sure.
right?
Things I don't even know about. Yeah.
And that's my point, right? Like, these other consumer brands that I mentioned, the earlier ones, it's a really clear identity. Nike for whatever shoes, and Lululemon for yoga pants, and Tesla for electric cars, and you could rattle off so many more, right? But then I said Procter and Gamble, who do a million things.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. You don't go to Procter and Gamble. You go to Tide, right? Laundry detergent. You go to, do they make Tide? I have no idea,
Not
right?
sure,
but there's so many consumer products.
Yeah.
They're consumer products, and I hope the analogy is landing, right? That as a consultant, if you do a million things like Procter and Gamble, nobody will really know what to go to you for.
Mm-hmm.
And so to go beyond that warm network into the cold market, you're going to have to get really clear and focused. And to your point, there's the internal element of how do you hire without a clear focus? Where do you find these rock stars? How expensive are they going to be? And that's often a real limiter. And then there's the external focus, is how do you grow when the market doesn't really know what to make of you and what you do.
Mm-hmm. And all of this really speaks to being able to define identity, right? Who you are, what you do outside of yourself. Because when you're small, it's easy, right? If you're the person having every conversation, you can bob and weave and tell your story, right? If you're the person who's delivering every engagement, same thing. You can make adjustments. You can do whatever you need to do. You'll get it done. When you need to hand off that identity, whether that's internally to someone who's going to do some of that work, or whether that's externally to someone who's going to take your story, right? Who's going to pass it along to people they know, who's going to take it out there and talk about you. That's where things need to be clear, because once it's outside of you, right? Once it's not just coming from your mouth, then you need to have it packaged in a way that it lives on its own. And that's really the challenge.
Yeah. And so I think, what I hope we're doing effectively here is I want to challenge the traditional professional services and consulting growth model. Okay. Which is that the traditional growth model for consulting professional services is do good work, get busy, get to capacity, hire more people, then do more good work for clients, fill up those people's capacity, and then hire more people, and then do, and so on and so forth. And I'm not saying there isn't a path there. I am saying, and we are saying, that the path is more challenging than you think. Finding those people is going to be really, really difficult. Getting those clients without a clear focus, really, really difficult. And, last but not least, we didn't touch on this, but profitability, I think, is a big question mark too, right? Because how do you scope out projects and estimate margin on projects when everything is completely different and complex and from scratch, and there's tons of variability? They're going to have a lot of challenges maintaining profitability. And what I'd like to do is introduce a different way to grow a consulting professional services firm, which, in a bumper sticker, I would say scale requires simplification. Growth, and this is not true for consulting professional services, it's true for any business model. Scale and growth requires removing things before you add, removing before you grow, removing before you amplify or multiply. And so, in the example of the couple of partners that I mentioned earlier, they're now a 90-day pipeline. Why are they there? Yes, to grow to $2 million in revenue, absolutely, but that's not the first stop. The first stop is, let's see what you've done or what you currently do with the clients that you have that's actually scalable. Because, by the way, every service is not scalable for a whole bunch of reasons, right? Many of which we referred to today. So if we look at, all the work that they've done with the clients that they have, some of those services, some of those offers are more scalable than others. Some of those services, some of those offers have more demand than others. Some of those are easier to deliver on than others, right? And so the task now becomes, what's the 20% of the work, or 30% of the work, or 40% of the work that's really, truly scalable? And how do we start to cut away at everything else and focus on the most scalable elements and services and offers in the business?
Which is a really interesting exercise, right? Because it is difficult often for people to go through that thought process, right? What do you mean you're going to tell me to stop doing something, to stop thinking about something, to stop, just sort of reaching out and grabbing whatever work happens to be around me, or, that I can get myself connected to? There's a real mindset shift there that, often comes after the actual work happens, right? After you've actually figured it out, where you realize that, in fact, saying no to something means saying yes to something else, right? Creating space is critical. And yes, you're going to have some uncomfortable moments as you do it, but really it's the thing that's going to allow you to be able to make that next big jump.
Yeah, and I often use us as an organization as an example that people can relate to, because they're obviously talking to us. They're familiar with our approach and our marketing. Somebody comes to us and says, well, because we obviously work with B2B consultants. Somebody says, well, I'm a software company. Can you help me? The answer is no. Somebody says, well, I'm an e-commerce company. Can you help me? The answer is no. Somebody says, well, I sell lighting. Okay, because I saw a light in front of me. That's the only reason why I said lighting, right? The answer is no. Is it because we can't help them? No. We probably could. We probably help them better than other people. But it's not our focus. It's not who we're set up to serve. And we already have abundant opportunity within our area of focus, right? And so it's funny because when people express this kind of this fear of focus, this fear of limiting, I often ask them, if I handed you, let's say in the case of this partnership I was referring to earlier, if I handed you $2 million worth of business today within a very specific limited area of focus, would you take the business? The answer is yes. So it's not a fear of focusing, it's a fear of there being enough opportunity within a specific area of focus.